That sounds good. Let's do it again. Good evening. Good evening. Hotep. Assalamu alaikum. Habar Ghani. All right. My name is Dr. Ron Daniels. I'm the president of the Institute of the Black World 21st Century. And it is our honor to co-sponsor this incredibly important historic occasion tonight with the Trans-Africa Forum and the 1199 SEIU. Let's give all of the sponsors a big round of applause. And now we want to move expeditiously into our program. Before I do that, quickly, let me just recognize some guests who are not really guests, freedom fighters from St. Louis. Rahel is here, as well as Tony Russell from Hands Up United from St. Louis. Where are you? Helping to lead that movement, these young freedom fighters. Also, quickly, let me just acknowledge Rosalind Prudhomme, who is our executive assistant who works so closely with the staff of the Venezuelans. Her husband, George Prudhomme, who's with her. George, take a bow. The IBW volunteers, let's give them a round of applause, as well as all the staff people who made this incredible event possible tonight. Let's give it up for all of them. The workers who gave of their time and energy tonight. And now we are honored to have been joined by Ambassador Rhonda King of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the First Lady of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the wife, the Honorable Dr. Ralph Gonzalez. Would you please give them a warm welcome? Yes. Yes. Great champions in the forefront, struggling around the issue not only of reparatory justice, but defending the rights of Dominicans, the right of Dominican Haitians. Dr. Ralph Gonzalez was one of the very first ones to stand up and tell the Dominicans that if they did not treat their Haitian people of Dominican ancestry correctly, that they would in fact incur the wrath of the world. So we want to, again, honor Dr. Ralph Gonzalez and the work that he's done, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And of the former European colonialists, reparations for native genocide and African enslavement. It is one of the most powerful movements growing globally. Would you please welcome to the rostrum the leader who has spearheaded that movement for a few remarks, the Honorable Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Comrade Ralph.
Comrade Chairman, Comrade President, other comrades at the head table, comrades and friends gathered here in Harlem. First of all, I'd like to apologize for being late at this event. As you know, in this week, there are several events. But I had to make it here. And just in case I didn't make it, I asked our ambassador to come here, and she came, and I asked my wife to come here, because nearly 30 years ago, when I entered the institution of holy matrimony, I was told by the priest that she and I are now one. So if I were not here and she's here, well, therefore I am here. I want to say that the legacy of Hugo Chavez is one of a profound solidarity in the interest of people's humanization in the Caribbean and Latin America. Like Fidel and Raúl and the Cuban Revolution, and Chavez and Nicolas and the Bolivarian Revolution. They go all over the world and they provide help They provide solidarity. They do not provide extras. They provide from the little which they have, which is the most profound form of solidarity. And wherever they go, they do not take over banks, nor insurance companies. They do not own oil or gas or geothermal resources or any resources of any country with which they engage. In the case of Cuba, the most dramatic example was the work of the Cuban brothers and sisters in going to Angola to defend the independence and patrimony of the people of Angola, and in the process gave the racist South African regime their worst military defeat at the Battle of Cuitacona Valley. They shed blood. They protected the independence of the people of Angola. And then they walked away. They left the resources in Cabinda and in other parts of Angola. And they sent doctors and nurses and engineers and teachers to help to develop Angola. And when countries were timid about tackling Ebola in West Africa, Cuba sent more doctors to fight Ebola than all countries in the world put together. I am not saying, as Pope Francis told me in December 2013 in the Vatican, that Fidel is a believer. I don't have to affirm that. Papal understanding and the application of heart to wisdom can bring that conclusion. I'm an ordinary Roman Catholic. I don't have the perspicacity of the Holy Father. But what I do know is that Fidel has a sense of humanity and brotherhood, which makes his socialism and his solidarity Christianity in action, and so too Chavez and Nicolas Maduro. My country is a small one. We have 10,700 square nautical miles of sea, 70 times our landscape. And the assistance that we have received from Cuba and Venezuela, that assistance throughout the whole period of the global economic meltdown, that is what saved my country from going into the arms of the IMF. And I tell you the truth, rather than go into the arms of the IMF, I will go fishing. So I thank Fidel and Hugo Chavez and Nicolas for keeping me away from fishing. And I am in office now for 15 consecutive years. We don't have term limits. And I believe that when we go to the polls, within a few months' time, we will make it around 20 years. Sometimes I feel that I've been around so long that even though I can't converse with Moses, maybe I can have some discussions with the prophet builder Nehemiah. And it is an important lesson from Nehemiah, who sought after 112 years to rebuild the city walls of Jerusalem. And every time he was working with his people united, building. Those who are against the metaphoric rebuilding of the walls around Jerusalem. It's happening in Venezuela and in Cuba and in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and other places around the world. There are always people who will mock you. They will engage in conspiracy against you. They will belittle you. They will try to take you from the hills and carry you to the plains of Ono to try to ambush you. We are advised, let them come and meet us where we are. And let us not give in to the naysayers, the modern-day Sanballat and Tobiah of the Ammonites, and keep our focus on what is fundamental, people. And to build hope, and to have faith, but a faith not which is an abstraction, not a faith with your feet firmly planted in the sky, but a faith which is made complete by deeds, by works, and in the process of doing so, to build it with love. A love which looks on tempests and is never shaken. A love which stays steadfast and firm and in solidarity with one another. This has been the story of those who have chosen the path not of individual selfishness, not of the spoliation of our universe, of Mother Nature, but to build a society of caring, of peace, and of justice. And it is in this context that everyone knows who has studied history, anyone who has an understanding of contemporary reality in the Caribbean. And you know it too in the United States of America, but I'm a guest here and therefore I will not speak about the United States of America. You have more people capable and knowledgeable than I am to speak on that. But the legacy of underdevelopment in our region is traced directly to colonialism and imperialism, and more specifically to native genocide and African slavery. I know sometimes when I come to audiences and they look at me and they see a fellow who looks Caucasian. Well, you know, my four parents went to St. Vincent and the Grenadines as indentured servants from Madeira, shortly after the abolition of slavery. And I grew up in the villages among the people. The first time I knew a pair of hard shoes is when I was 12 years old to go and write an exam to get into secondary school. That's the first time I knew it. So as the Rasta men and women say, you have to over something far more than what you see with your eye. And go to the heart and soul of men and women and find out who they are. And by their works, you will know them. And we have a giant movement, a mighty movement in the region, seeking reparations, reparatory justice for native genocide and African slavery. This conversation doesn't have to be belligerent. The word belligerent comes from a Latin root word which means war, bellum. I don't have to wage war. I don't have to go in front of number 10 Downing Street with a placard. I am the Prime Minister of an independent nation state called St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I know how to approach issues before the World Fora, including the International Court of Justice, to seek the rights of the descendants of persons who are resident in our various Caribbean territories to get a recompense, an appropriate recompense for native genocide and African slavery. We are having a conversation. I don't have to raise my voice with Prime Minister Cameron. We had a discussion today. But I told him that the issue of reparations for native genocide and African slavery has to be taken within the context of the post-2015 development conversation to address the matters of the legacy of underdevelopment and to right historic wrong. And we in CARICOM have adopted a 10-point program. Not for individual people to get money in their pockets, no. But for us to address the legacy so that we can deal with the infrastructure and education and culture and monuments. It is fascinating that you go to the United Kingdom. You see monuments of persons who were among those responsible for genocide and slavery. But I don't have any monuments in my country for those who resisted. We have to teach a history which is ours. And we have to come home to ourselves. I know that all of us here, that we are compromisers. But it doesn't mean that because we are compromisers through the force of history, that we have to be compromising on principles. And to understand ourselves, we have to ask our mothers and our fathers and our grandparents. And we have to understand why is it that we speak in a language which we do not think. We have to grasp what are all the cross currents that came to make us the compromises which we are. And to come home. And to come home to ourselves. To know ourselves better. To understand our possibilities and our limitations, our strengths and our weaknesses. To enhance our possibilities and strengths. and to reduce as far as possible our limitations and weaknesses in the interests of our people's humanization. And to do these things, we have to work together in partnership. CARICOM is putting forward that agenda. And the 33 member states of the Community of States of Latin America and the Caribbean have endorsed it. And people across the world, including Brother Daniels and other people, our dear brother Perkins and Danny Glover, whom, you know, I tell you, when I approach him, I approach him with starry eyes because he's such a star. This issue of reparations for native genocide and African slavery is an anti-imperialist and anti-colonialist issue. Order. And in this early 21st century is one of the major questions. And don't think that it is not wrapped up with the struggles here of the poor in this country and persons of African descent. And I don't have to tell you which lives matter from which lives do not matter. I don't want to get into that controversy. But my dear sister knows where my heart is. And it is not in San Francisco. And then a travesty is being perpetrated against persons of Haitian descent who are born in the Dominican Republic. And we must speak out against this in unequivocal terms and demand that CELAC and the United Nations hold an unequivocal position on this. But not to shame the members of our Caribbean family in the Dominican Republic, but to reach out and put our hands in friendship and say, please, this is a stain on our Caribbean civilization, and it is unacceptable in the 21st century, in our civilization, to have this cynical denial of rights of the people of Haitian descent who were born in the Dominican Republic. And, well, you know, my brother, it is unacceptable for persons to be denied or to have their citizenship taken away retroactively on the basis of nationality or ethnicity. But I say this, they are members of our Caribbean family. And in the same way in which we have a member in our family who does something of which we do not approve, we must reach out our hand in friendship to let that person in our family see that what they're doing is unacceptably wrong. But they themselves, in their hearts and minds, must come to the conclusion that they need some assistance to help to bring them to redemption on this particular issue. This is not a matter of migration. This is a matter, the issue of migration is an issue between Haiti and the Dominican Republic in relation to persons who migrate and go from Haiti to the Dominican Republic to work in factories, to cut cane, or do any other kind of work. That's a migration issue. This I'm talking about is an international human rights issue of the highest order. And the distinction must be absolutely clear. And we must not accept any jingoistic clothing for a sovereignty where the fig leaf of sovereignty is used to defend wrong against an innocent group of people. All they did was just born in Haiti, in the Dominican Republic, and the parents of Haitian descent. As Raoul pointed out, that if such a law existed in Cuba, he, Raoul, because he was born after 1929, would have to go back to Spain. But Fidel, who was born before 1929, would get a chance to stay in Cuba. That's how ridiculous this law is. And we are, you notice what I'm saying? We are not fighting our brothers and sisters. We are reaching out a hand of friendship to work with them. And in the case of peoples of African descent, this is the decade for the upliftment of peoples of African descent. One of the first things those who haven't read it yet should do this week, this month, is to read Walter Rodney's book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. To get an understanding as to the manner in which imperialism underdeveloped Africa and all what followed in its train. A lot of good is happening in Africa today, but there's so much more work to be done. The only intervention I'm making in relation to the United States tonight is to end by quoting the very famous set of words by Robert Frost. I shall be saying this ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in the woods, and I have chosen the one least traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Thank you very much.
Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Let's give him a warm welcome, Comrade Ralph. Well, and now the Senator, our host, would like to make a special presentation to our President. So would you kindly do so?
Can you hear me? I tend to have a big mouth. So, Stella, amor. Please, but this is going to be brief. But we wanted to make sure that we pay tribute to our esteemed guest of honor by making a presentation to him. And I'm going to ask in doing this that my colleagues in government, Councilmember Charles Barron, other elected officials and or their representatives to please stand up as we make this presentation on all of our behalf, those of us who have the privilege of serving in these legislative bodies and whatnot. We want it to be clear that whether it's on the city level, the state level, or even the federal level, we're with you. And so this proclamation reads, and I'm not going to read it all because, as you all know, these things can get very wordy. And whereas Nicolas Maduro was a steadfast supporter of Hugo Chavez when he became a political prisoner in 1992, alongside his wife, the brilliant lawyer and esteemed political leader, Celia Flores. They campaigned for the release of Chavez, which was granted in 1994. And whereas Nicolas Maduro, yes, otra vez, más alto, and whereas Nicolas Maduro commenced to serve his fellow Venezuelan in 1999 when he was elected to the National Constituent Assembly. Due to his meticulous skills and indefatigable dedication, he quickly ascended to higher offices and positions with more substantial scope and responsibilities. To wit, he served in the Chamber of Deputies and later in the National Assembly, rising to the singular position of President of the National Assembly in 2005. And whereas Nicolas Maduro continued to serve his cherished Venezuela as Minister of Foreign Affairs and Vice President under the inspiring and renowned leadership of Chavez's administration. Furthermore, when President Hugo Chavez was struck by cancer and his life sadly taken prematurely, Nicolas Maduro was the individual whom Chavez himself declared was most prepared, accomplished, and worthy to be his successor. And whereas Nicolas Maduro became president of Venezuela in 2013, and shortly thereafter won election to the office in a campaign that was a referendum both on the legacy of Hugo Chavez and the future vision of President Maduro. His tenure has been focused on progressive social initiatives, including universal health care, humane economic policies, sound infrastructure investment, transportation and natural resource development. And whereas Nicolas Maduro is a friend to Harlem and to so many in New York City, due to his continuation and support of a munificent and caring initiative begun by President Hugo Chavez that provides free, ¿cómo se dice free?
Free.
Home heating oil to over 75,000, repeat after me, 75,000 households in our shared communities. And whereas it is the sense of this or any other legislative body that when an individual of such worldly and noble aims and accomplishments are brought to our attention, it is appropriate to publicly proclaim and command. Therefore, be it resolved that I, along with all of us who are here assembled, that we recognize in the person of Nicolas Maduro, President of Venezuela, we have an exceptional statesman, tireless labor leader, and civil and human rights crusader, worthy of our highest respect and esteem. And be it further resolved that a copy of this proclamation be translated to President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela at tonight's event. Muchas gracias, hermano.
And so now I'd like to move expeditiously, and people are behaving really well. to a series of remarks from Afro Descendant leaders, all of whom I know, all of whom are dynamic in their own right, all of whom are very capable and able. First and foremost, we'd like to welcome to the microphone a co-founder of the Black Lives Matter movement, which is sweeping the entire world. I used to know her, and she used to come to some of our meetings, but now, you know, she's gotten global, and it's kind of hard now to catch up with her anymore. But she is a bad sister, and she is doing some incredible work. Would you please welcome Opo Tamedi?
Good evening, brothers and sisters. Good evening. So I want to just first off say thank you to the government of Venezuela and President Maduro. I really appreciate your participation in this event and your leadership. It's not only my honor to share with you all tonight, but it is my duty. It is my duty to continue in the tradition of many Afro-descendant freedom fighters who came before me. It is my duty to speak the truth without apology and to share about the realities of our people in the United States. You see, hundreds of thousands of courageous people have transformed their mourning into action. They have forged a movement for Black lives because they are sick and tired of having no semblance of justice as young Black people like Trayvon Martin, like Renisha McBride, like Ayanna Stanley Jones, Mike Brown, and Akai Gurley are routinely murdered with impunity. They are fed up of living with the knowledge that an unarmed Black person is killed every 28 hours. And they will no longer tolerate the status quo. Beloved, according to the FBI, police kill Black people in the United States at nearly the same rate as Jim Crow era lynchings. Our people know that this is not happenstance. This crisis did not happen overnight. The criminalization and exploitation of Black bodies has been the status quo since we've been kidnapped from Africa and then enslaved. For decades, we've seen the pushback against our progress, the attempts to undermine the gains of Black liberation movements that came before us. And we experience the daily effects of the neoliberal agenda that has gut the social safety net that was intended to provide some modicum of support and stabilization to marginalized communities. And instead, we've seen an investment in apparatuses and systems that criminalize us and that displace us. What we live and what we witness is the manifestation of pervasive anti-Black racism, and that constitutes state violence. Call it what it is. And to be sure, police brutality and extrajudicial killing are not the only evidence of this violence, but so too is the high unemployment rates, the homelessness, the substandard US education system, the 1 million Black people who are imprisoned, and the 500,000 undocumented Black immigrants, and all the trans-antagonistic violence that we see today. All are evidence of this state violence. And as the daughter of Nigerian immigrants, and as one of 3 co-founders of the hashtag Black Lives Matter, the Political Project, and the International Network, I know well the challenges that Black people face in the United States, but across the globe. Our movement is transnational because our struggles are inextricably linked. So in the same breath, when I say that I am outraged with the extrajudicial killings of Black people in the US, I am also outraged as I hear about the horrors and the abuses of my brothers and sisters who are being deported en masse from the Dominican Republic. I'm also outraged equally at my brothers and sisters of African descent from the continent who are drowning every single week in the Mediterranean Sea. They're forced from their homeland due to Western economic policies, land grabs, and neo-colonial financial instruments like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. And I am acutely aware that climate justice is also a racial justice issue. 6 of the top 10 most acutely impacted nations by climate change are on the continent of Africa. And I say the lives of Black people in the US and across the globe are inextricably linked. And we cannot win without global solidarity. And so it's with that, I charge us, this Black Summit, all of us to fight until every single Black life matters. No matter where we are, we must fight. And like our dear exiled sister Assata Shakur said, it is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must fight until all Black lives matter. Thank you.
Women of Syria, African American women, and Presidente Maduro, Afro-Venezuelan women. Our ancestors were pulled out of Africa and brought to the America by force. In these lands were enslaved and their strength exploited until their death. But many, men and women, rebelled and survived, constructing an identity and a culture that endures till today. To transform our reality in which we live, all these organizations are presenting this platform to advance in the fulfilling of our rights in the framework of the International Decade of People of African Descent. To that end, before the states and governments of Latin America and Caribbean, and to you, President Maduro, we demand the following. Combating racism is everyone's responsibility. We want a decent life without poverty. We want to decide our future. Our civil rights are human rights. Quality education for all. We need comprehensive sexual and reproductive health care. No more violence toward Afro-descendant women. Becoming visible is a national census and statistics. Protection and opportunities for children and adolescents and young adults. We want access to justice. I want to recap, with all due respect to you, President Maduro, that the voices of Afro-descendant women is marginalized. I stand today making a call, an invitation for all to join us in the fight in defending our human rights. Because without these women, our women, without us, there is no future.
Yvette Modestine. Yvette Modestine. Yvette Modestine. Okay, we're moving right along. Is everybody all right? It's a little warm out there, but we just imagine we're in the tropics and we're having a nice time and all of that, right? So everybody's okay, right? Everybody's cool. So we're gonna have a great time. All right, moving right along, I want to do 2 things. Our co-host, she will never forgive me if I don't invite her to the microphone because she hosts the Pan-African Unity Dialogue and she was the host of the labor leaders meeting that we just had. Would you please welcome the Executive Vice President of 1199 SAIU, Estela Vasquez.
Buenas noches, familia. Good evening. Señor presidente, bienvenido a la ciudad de Nueva York. Un abrazo de los obreros de la ciudad de Nueva York. I'm giving a workers' welcome to President Maduro to New York City. One each, and I bring you solidarity and support from 400,000 members of 1199 in 5 states in the Eastern Seaboard. One thing that you learn as a trade unionist in the workplace is that unity matters. Because when the boss gonna abuse you, steal your salary, he or she doesn't care what color you are, just that you have to work for your labor. And that is the type of unity that we need to build in our community. I'm a native of the Dominican Republic, and let me make it very clear in this stage. I stand with solidarity with my Dominico Haitians, sisters and brothers, and I denounce the deportation of Dominico Haitians in the Dominican Republic. It is wrong. We need to stop it. It is apartheid in the Caribbean, and it must be stopped. I would like to leave with 2 things. One, I would like to invoke from this podium the memory of a brother in Harlem, which Friday was a celebration for Brother Elon Bebrath, and I know he's here with us tonight. And I would also like to quote an African revolutionary, Amilcar Cabral. And I'm paraphrasing him. Amilcar said that solidarity is not an act of charity. It's an act of defense of mutual interest. And for us, our solidarity with the Venezuelan process is not charity. We are defending the common interest that we have with the Venezuelan workers because we are all fighting the same enemy that oppresses workers here in the U.S., the same enemy that killed young black people in the U.S., and the same enemy that divides workers all over the world. And it's time to say, the people united will never be defeated. The people united will never be defeated. Thank you. Muchísimas gracias. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido.
Brothers and sisters and friends, we are close to the end of our program. We are at the end of our program. I want to make a couple of quick acknowledgments. Pam Africa, are you still here? Pam Africa. Pam Africa, who has led the way in saving the life of Mumia Abdul-Jamal, is in the house. Pam Africa. Let's give it up for Pam Africa. All the way from St. Louis, he is here now. I know him by way of Brother Jaziri X, and through the movement of Black Lives Matter, Brother Tef Poe is in the house. Where are you? Raise your hand. Got to get to meet you, brother. And also from the Bronx, Rebel Diaz, who is a hip-hop artist and freedom fighter, also in the house. Now, as we close, I want to invite Minister Abdul Hafiz Muhammad to come to provide the benediction. But as we do so, I want to advise Prime Minister Gonzalez, lest you know, that last week at the Congressional Black Caucus, the National African American Reparations Commission unveiled its 10-point reparatory justice program at the Congressional Black Caucus last week. And we will present you a copy shortly, and we will present a copy to President Maduro as well. And so with that, Minister Abdul Hafiz Muhammad to provide our benediction. And after the benediction, we ask everyone to remain seated or standing, but in place as the President's party recesses and leave the premises. We want you to all remain in place. You can clap, you can do whatever you want to do, but please remain in place until the president and his party has, in fact, departed. Minister Abdul Hafiz, Muhammad's Mosque number 7, which is a great honor because that is the mosque where El-Haj Malik El-Shabazz was also a minister in the Nation of Islam. Minister Hafiz.
Thank you. Thank you. You may be seated. We can say this benediction with you being seated. Let me say to our President, Nicolas Maduro, of the Republic of Venezuela, on behalf of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the National Representative of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Eternal Leader of the Nation of Islam, we welcome you here and we say to you, Assalamu alaikum, peace be unto you. It is an honor to have you here in Harlem, here among the oppressed people. As we say this benediction to everyone, you know that we are on the heels of the 20th anniversary of the historic Million Man March. In the audience, and please stand up as Minister Farrakhan's international representative, Minister Abdul Akbar Muhammad. Let's give him a well-deserved round of applause. This is our brother that have been to over 140 countries in the world, and he's a great scholar and teacher among all of humanity. We say to you, Mr. President, and to all of us that are present, there's a universal cry for justice all over the earth today, for freedom, for justice, and equality. And Minister Farrakhan says a human need is a human right. And all of us have a human right to strive for full and complete freedom, to have equality and equal membership among the best of civilized society, and to have justice applied equally to all, regardless of creed, class, or color. That's the platform of the Justice or Else movement. We join with Black Lives Matter, and Black Lives Matter because it is the black man and woman and the Aboriginal people that are the fathers and the mothers of all humanity out of Mother Africa. All humanity owes their life to Mother Africa. And so, as we stand here in Harlem, we understand that justice is what we all are seeking. And we say in these closing words that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that justice is fair dealing. Justice is the law that distinguishes right from wrong. But I add one more meaning. Justice is the weapon that God uses in the day of judgment. America is being held in judgment. 10-10-15, justice or else. Thank you as we greet you in peace. Assalamu alaikum, peace be unto you.
And so I want to, where's my Prime Minister? I want to present him a copy of the 10-point program. We just want to let you know we ain't dragging our feet up in here. And we want to present a copy to President Maduro as well. Would you please pass this down to him? And so, let the drummers begin, and let the recessional begin. So please remain in your state. Please remain while the president leaves. Please remain. Remain in your place as the president leaves.